And welcome to this session, The Future of Proposal Management. My name is Micheál McGrath. I'm the VP of Marketing and Business Development here at Visible Thread, and I'm delighted to welcome to this event. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's content so far. This is the third presentation or conversation that we've had today, and it's just been an overwhelming start. The feedback that we're getting from attendees and registrants and speakers has been fab. So thank you so much for posting on LinkedIn and filling out the surveys. We're loving to see all that content come back in. And it's very early days yet, a lot to do, a lot more content to come. If you've missed anything, if you go back to the main optimized landing page, those sessions are popping up on demand as recordings as we speak, so you'll be able to catch up on everything. Before we get going into this presentation and conversation, a little bit of housekeeping. So there is a Q&A chat. So if you have any questions for Beth or Christina today, please put them into that console. We'd be delighted to have open questions throughout the conversation. We have bookmarked a little bit of time at the end to tackle questions, but we really want to get you involved. So if you have any questions at all, please put them in. We also have an attendee chat, so you can chat to each other. Let us know where you're coming from, where you're tuning in from this morning. I'm based here in Cork in Ireland, hence the accent. But yeah, so I'd love to know if you've enjoyed the sessions to date, but if you have any questions, please do give them to the speakers. We have Beth and Christina here today. Beth, starting with you, would you like to introduce yourself and let us know where you're coming from?
Yes, sure. My name is Beth Fassett. I have been in the proposal industry about 5 years. I work for a company called Dragos, and I am located in central U.S. I live in Missouri, so shout out to all my fellow Missourians.
Very good. And Christina, how are you today?
Yeah, good. I'm Christina Carter. I am based out in London, hence my accent. And I have been mostly in the B2B commercial space, but also in the public sector space, both in the US and in EMEA. And I'm currently a consultant helping people with their proposal processes.
Very good. Well, look, we have two people with similar kind of backgrounds here, but obviously we're working in directly in an organization and a consultancy. And Beth and Christina, they're being modest as well. They have a long history in proposal management and lots of experience to share. They also step into kind of BD and capture areas as well. So if you do have any questions across the whole gamut, I'm sure they'll be happy to take it on. But today we're going to talk about proposal management in focus. And even just to get started off, I'd love to know, Beth, how did you get into this industry? What drew you to this field?
Yeah, so I found myself with a master's degree in English and didn't really have a plan necessarily for using it at the time. So here locally, through some connections from college, I ended up getting a job as a proposal writer at a law firm. I was gonna say local law firm, nationally local. The national office was local, but was a national firm. So that's kind of how I got into it. I didn't know anything about proposals prior to that. I was just looking for something that was related to writing and English and whatnot. So that's how I landed there. I spent 4 years working in accounting and services firms, and then was looking for, once I decided, I really like this. This is sort of my cup of tea. I decided I wanted to make this a career. So I started looking at other industries. Where else can I work? What other industries can I take what I've learned here as a proposal writer, proposal manager, and transfer that into a different industry? So I started looking around, and I was looking a lot at tech, right? I was looking for something a little more exciting. No offense to the accountants and those who work in accounting and service firms, but it's a little boring, right? It's not a secret that that's boring. It's true. Great, solid work, right? We're always going to need audits, but yeah, just it doesn't change a lot. So I was looking for something a little more exciting, something a little bit more forward, right, with the times. So so I started looking in technology, and I did a huge job search and ended up at Dragos. So specifically, Dragos is an OT cybersecurity company, so a lot of growth available there. So yeah.
Fabulous. And Christina, what was your journey to date?
Gosh, so Beth and I are really similar. I feel like a lot of us proposal people get into it accidentally, right? So yeah, I also graduated, and I was really into business writing, technical writing, and I had like a tech unicorn kind of take a chance on me. And so I was really lucky. I got into that space immediately right out of university. And I've stayed in tech ever since. I've been really lucky. They've sent me out to a bunch of different countries. I've lived in Hong Kong, building out proposal teams there. Here in where do I live now? London, doing the exact same thing. So I've been really lucky. It's been a really good accidental career that I've fallen into.
Fabulous. I remember it was very kind of evident at our VT summit. It was probably last year's one rather than this one. But I remember talking to a group of proposal managers at one particular table, and they were like, "We didn't train to be here. Like we didn't go to university thinking we were going to do this. We stumbled upon it." Is that kind of normal? Is that where you're seeing it as well? You're both nodding.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've thought I would love to change that. I would love to go infiltrate a bunch of universities and get some proposal training in them. But, I think nobody necessarily sets, I think if they want to work in professional writing, I think this falls under that umbrella, but I don't think that they consider this, right? It's kind of in between the writing and the project management worlds. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times they don't teach that this is an actual job path that you can take. And I need to be very clear, like in the enterprise commercial space, when I say proposals, I mean, it really does capture proposals and sales. Like it's kind of like an all-in-one. And yeah, it's just not talked about at all.
Very good. And I know the work that you're doing with Pi is almost a really big step in the process of making it more mainstream and getting that information out to you. I'm sure that conversation is going to happen throughout this, but even if you go back to your early career, Beth, starting with you, is there any pitfalls or lessons that you would give to someone who's starting day one as a proposal manager or proposal writer today?
Yeah, I think the thing that really helped me the most is being a part of a team. Now I'm a one-man shop, right? One-woman shop. So, I sort of do everything that comes with the process. But I think having not just a great manager, but your peers alongside you, so they can be like, hey, there's so many nuances. So you can be like, hey, is this normal? I'm just seeing this for the first time. What's up with this? So you can ask your peers questions. So I think finding somewhere that actually has a full team built out rather than inviting someone just to run the show from the start. And then alongside that, I mean, mentors, right? We can talk about where there's great mentor programs with Pi. We have one that I think you get connected with someone, and there's also group sessions. So I think that goes really well. And then also, just again, shout out to my Missouri people in the Greater Midwest chapter for APMP. There's also a mentorship program that runs really well. So finding a mentor is easier said than done, but looking at the programs that exist already, yeah, I think that's really great, because you can also get insights not only from your peers at the company that you work for, but you can also ask. That's how you kind of expand your growth, right? Is asking out people outside of your organization sort of questions about career paths, or just about things that you're experiencing. Is this normal? Like, here's our process for this. What do you guys do? Right. I think that helps you grow as well. Yeah.
Fabulous. Christina, any other points on that kind of your early start?
Yeah, I would say read as much as you can, not just like proposal management books, but also sales books like Challenger Inc., Jolt Effect, anything around that. I think there's a bunch of research that says if you've read less than 20 books on your specific topic, you're functionally illiterate in your topic. So read as much as you can. And then also brag about the things that you've done with sales leaders. You can work really, really hard, but no one is going to know you worked hard or did something great unless people know about it. So I feel like a lot of people who get into our little proposal management area, we tend to be quiet. We tend to be a little bit humble, but you got to kind of break through that. And that would be, in addition to best great advice, that would be my advice.
I love that. And I think I've heard that a lot. My history here with Visible Tread, I'm with Visible Tread about 4 years, and that narrative of breaking out of this proposal box and being part of that bigger sales part, and the people that we've seen really excel and go, from proposal manager to a leader of the operations team, or to move up into different sectors and different departments, they've all had that attitude. They've all had like, I just don't think of us as a separate unit. I think of us as the full picture. And that's great advice. I love the interaction in the chat with people from Toronto and DC and Georgia, all coming in, and people are sharing their LinkedIn. So feel free to keep doing that. And if you're connecting with Christina and Beth here, if it makes sense to you and you're aligning with it, feel free to ask any questions or thumbs up. But we have over 200 people on the stream, which is fabulous. And I'm sure lots of people catching the on demand as well, which is super. On to the next kind of side of things. Is there, I suppose, looking back in your history, Beth, has anything changed dramatically from when you kind of started out to today?
Yeah, so I mean, the last 5 years, right, of all of the business world has changed pretty significantly, right? But I think when I look at proposals specifically, I think we're not printing things anymore, right? There are industries that are, I hear about it, but for the most part, no one is printing things anymore. No one's printing things. Everything moves a little bit at a faster pace, right? We're seeing more RFPs and shorter timelines as well. So I think that's sort of what we're facing right now. We're seeing more come at us, and so looking at the things that are in our processes that we can either let go of, right? There's certain things that take more time than others, right? So certain things that we can let go of that might not have mattered before, but now that we have to get 5 proposals out in 2 weeks, right? We need to look at those timelines and processes and see what we can change and cut and what tools are out there that we can use to adapt to. But yeah, I think that's the big thing. The processes are shorter. The whole timelines are shorter. So our processes have shrunk and changed. And I think that's sort of what we're looking at moving forward too. Yeah.
Fabulous. Christine, on your side, has anything dramatic changed since you started?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ancient compared to Beth, so I've seen a lot bigger changes. But I think in the past few years, I've seen some pretty dramatic things. And of course, there's AI, but there's also going to be things like headcount. So as a proposal team, usually we have fewer headcount now. They're a lot less likely to hire more people to help you out. So you have to do more with less. And what does that look like for us? Like Beth said, it's going to be shorter timelines, the chance of more RFPs most likely. But also people are less likely to buy, and buyers are less likely to buy, right? So we're a lot more likely to lose to the status quo or inaction, less likely than to necessarily other competitors. And that's like a huge thing. So people are less likely to be buying our products, but going out to RFP more. So more work potentially for less revenue. And that's what I'm seeing right now.
Makes a lot of sense. And I know you're both working in kind of state, government, commercial proposals, or you have experience and all. Maybe starting with Beth, is any of the changes specific to one sector or another sector? What are the main differences between the three or more?
Yeah, so I'm most of my experience lies in commercial B2B, sure. But I've dipped my toes in the others as well, right? So I think when I see, I think government has changed the least, but I could be wrong about that, right? Because I don't see it as much. But when I think about state, I don't see shorter timelines with state. I still get state RFPs, and I kind of ask myself or ask the team, like, how serious are they about this? Because I don't think I get a state RFP that the deadline doesn't get pushed or the whole project doesn't get pushed. I still see that everywhere, right? So maybe Christine can speak more to that. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, I think everything is on its way to change, but I do think that government, it moves slower, right, than commercial, for sure. Yeah.
Christine, on your side?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to speak mostly to the enterprise commercial side, right? The B2B side. So I'm very much like Beth in that way. However, I do have quite a few clients who are in the public sector space, mostly with like higher ed, so ed tech. And they are seeing kind of like, I feel like whatever is happening in the commercial space ends up happening in the B2G space now. I don't think that was how it was in the past. So I think you can kind of almost look forward to see what's happening in that space to know what's happening in your space. And I think another thing that I'm really seeing is there are also, like I kind of said with the commercial side, you're also losing out to cost of inaction, or sorry, inaction in the status quo there as well, because they're also having trouble getting funding, approved. So they might go out to RFI or RFP to see what that budget is, but they're like, I don't know if that's worth it, and it just goes away. So I think that's similar throughout everywhere you go.
I love that. And you can even see in the chat what a breath of fresh air, a glimpse to validation on the proposals that I'm working on. So I know you're speaking from your side, but I feel like people are agreeing with you. And from my perspective, dealing with some of the customers that we have in Visible Tread, it is that the speed in which proposals are coming at proposal teams seems to be the largest kind of issue. And maybe the idea of, even kind of comically, sometimes we see it on LinkedIn and things like that, this is the deadline for this proposal, and nobody believes that, or no one feels like that it's going to be accurate. And it's dealing with that. That can be very frustrating. You're almost kind of set up to fail a little bit. Do you agree with that kind of narrative? Is that kind of where you're seeing it as well?
I mean, from my side, yes. A lot of times we're seeing due dates and we are almost wondering if it's a typo, because it's like due 1 or 2 days after the Q&A is supposed to come out. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
And when you do push back on that deadline, especially in the public sector space, they're not pushing it out. I feel like in the commercial space, they're more likely to push out that deadline if you're a serious contender, whereas B2G, not so much. That's just what I've seen, though.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, we've taken the mindset of, hey, if we're going to question this timeline that they've put in, we're going to question this deadline. Like, hey, did you mean to put this in, in 3 days or whatever, right? We never assume, we just walk into it never assuming that they're going to hear that, right, and change it, right? We have to assume that they're going to stick to that deadline. I don't know what's going on the procurement side to speak to that, but yeah, we get the deadline and we're just, some of it, our eyebrows raised, and then we're like, okay, are we bidding on this or not? Like, is this realistic or not in this time frame? So yeah, we just assume that it's going to be that deadline. We have not that we haven't seen them change it and be like, oh yeah, no, that's not realistic. But most of the time, no.
Oh, fabulous. And I suppose if there's any kind of changes that the audience feels that are relevant to this conversation, feel free to drop them in. If there's anything that you think in the last couple of years that's been impactful to you, that's different in the proposal industry, feel free to put it into the chat, and we'll drop it into this conversation at some point. But Christina, you're being unique in a way. Are you working with many UK proposals or tenders? Is there anything that's different between maybe your work in the US versus the UK?
No, not really. Honestly, especially in the commercial space, the US and the UK differences are slim to none. It's the B2G that tends to have a lot of the changes. And even those are minimal, I would say. So yeah, go ahead.
And is your process very similar? Do you tackle both with the same kind of strategy, or do you work in different strategies depending if it's US or UK?
No, I think they're very similar. I mean, wording is different, so terminology is going to be different. Rules, regulations, of course, are different. But no, I think best practice in one is still best practice in another. What we're seeing is buyers tend to have the same problems in both countries, right? Like they both are struggling to get budget approval from their CFOs or whatever the equivalent is in their space. They're both looking for efficiencies. They're both looking for growth. They're both looking for pipeline. It's the same problems across geographies.
Brilliant. Beth, I'm going to, in a way, I know you do so much work with PI and so much best practice. On these kind of sessions about proposals, writing comes up as a main kind of topic over and over and over again. And as a marketer, that's always piques my interest, is how do you write in a compelling way? How do you gain engagement? How do you keep people interested? And it's the same for a proposal, right? It's about making a compelling story as much as being compliant, being compelling is as important. Do you have any tips and tricks for the audience that would help them make a more quality proposal?
Yeah, I don't think that my writing advice is going to be all that radical, right? I think that it stays consistent. I think the one thing is if you have the writing tips, being able to do them well is really important. So I think just the overarching message is going to be practice. Continue to practice your writing to get better. Ask for feedback, etc. But I think there are some things that I think, especially when we're looking at quicker timelines and trying to get writing out faster, there's still some really important things you have to remember. I think any message that you're doing, I think the first thing is to know your audience, and how that relates to proposals is know who's going to read the proposal, right? This is great for me as someone who's not the technical expert of our product, right? I work with the technical experts. They write for me. I make sure that whenever I'm reading what they write, that I can understand it from layman's terms, right? Because there might be a person who's reading that proposal who isn't the technical expert, but is a decision maker, right? They need to understand. We need to make sure that they understand the value of the product as well, right? So knowing who's reading the proposal is really important. And then, of course, centering the customer. That's always going to be up there as well. Making sure that we understand their needs, that we understand their problems, that we're able to communicate, hey, we understand you so well. That's why we're proposing the solution. It's not just like, here's my product, it's so great, buy it. It's like, hey, we realize that you have this problem and we're ready to solve it, right? And then finally, I think, especially when you're doing your review of your writing of your proposal as a whole, continue to ask yourself every single page. Ask yourself, so what, right? Read it as you are, as if you are the buyer, right? And ask yourself, so what? Why does this matter to them? Why does this matter? Why does this matter to solving their problems, to meeting their needs, right? That really digs into the value that you're providing, right? Because if you're just saying feature, benefit, right? They're not necessarily, there's always a so what, right? Does it actually matter to them or not? So yeah. And then, like I said, I think the overarching thing is just to continue to practice your writing. You're going to get better. If the more that you write, the better you'll get. So yeah.
I love that. And I suppose, Christina, from your perspective, and you mentioned it at the start, you talked about being part of the full gamut and being like bringing yourself into the sales environment as well and not being boxed in. The go, no go, or bid, no go processes is much part of your strategy and the way you work with your clients. How do you, any best practice for the group out there that you think that would really connect with them?
Oh yeah, best practice for qualification. I think one of the biggest things is making sure that you're being really data driven in what that bid qualification looks like or proposal qualification looks like. So really understanding and I think AI is actually really good at looking at data and synthesizing that data. So, going into your CRM, looking at where you've won, where you've lost, both in RFPs and in not. So I'm talking about regions, industries, particular services or products, maybe messaging that you've used or stakeholders that you've spoken with. And really looking at that to see what you've lost in the past and maybe not bidding on those in the future until you've fixed whatever that is, if you want to fix it. So be really data driven and make sure that you look at it every single year. So you're not just reusing the same thing over and over again, because what worked one year is not necessarily what's going to work the next year. A few other things that I think are going to be really useful is making sure that you are focusing on cost of inaction when you are like talking to your customer instead of ROI. I think ROI has been kind of like the main thing we've been talking about in the past, but now it's cost of inaction. Because like I said, a lot of times you are losing both in B2G and B2B to the status quo. So making sure you bring that up in the executive summary where the decision maker is hopefully reading it, or it will be given to the decision maker to help them make that decision. And that's probably the two biggest things I would suggest.
I love that. And it connects with a little question that came in from Joseph, and I know we're jumping from topic to topic a little bit to cover lots of different pieces, but Joseph asked an interesting question. Okay, surprise, you actually have a little bit of bandwidth. Doesn't happen too often in your industry, if I'm clear, but surprise, you do have time. What do you do with those extra days or extra weeks, or if it's only an hour or a minute? Do you have any best practice? Like, is there anything that you lean into there to focus more in those areas? Maybe Beth, starting with you, maybe.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's an ongoing question, right? I think it's updating content, taking time to update some of your content, making sure that your content library is up to date. That's a boring one though. Nobody wants to spend all their time doing that. I think the other things that I like to do outside of just creating reusable templates and, you know, revisiting that, making sure that our templates that we use are not only up to date, but reusable, so that again, when we're looking at getting things out quicker, that we have something that is polished and ready to go. And, you know, again, as a one person shop, I can sometimes be like, nope, I can't help you. Right? That happens. It's rare, but it does happen. Right? So being able to provide resources for the sales, the both BD and AE side, right? To be able to say like, hey, you know, I don't have time to respond to that, but here's some resources that you can utilize, can be really helpful. Yeah, I think those are the main things. I also like to, so, you know, not everyone is a writer. So I also like to create sort of, writing templates so that folks can, like, you know, hey, you know, you don't know how to write a cover letter, you don't know how to write an executive summary, but here are some examples that you can use. And, you know, so I like to create those for various industries or various needs, et cetera, right? That again can be tailored and modified so that folks who don't consider themselves writers or don't know where to start have something to start with when they go to write something. So I think I think that's what I do. Yeah.
I love that style guide piece, because I think transferring, like, sometimes it happens in every industry, but it's definitely a pain point that I've heard over the last kind of different webinars and different things that we've done here in Visible Thread, is this black box effect of only certain people have certain knowledge, and being able to share that knowledge across teams is a difficulty. I know we tackle it in Visible Thread with like shared dictionaries and helping people search better and find requirements better, or, you know, share prompts in an AI perspective. But like your idea of sharing like style and how to write well and tips and tricks in that kind of regard, or just even formulaic stuff like style and how the corporate team writes, I think is I just feel like that can be seem like an onerous task, but it could save you a lot of time in the long run if you can kind of really support your team members and junior people coming into your company as well. Christina, anything on those sides? If you ever had a free moment, what would you do?
Yeah, I think best suggestions are really good. I would also suggest maybe being selfish in a way it's not really being selfish, and upskilling yourself in like whatever area you kind of need to upskill yourself in. So whether that is using AI, do you feel comfortable using it? Because quite frankly, you do need to be comfortable using it nowadays. Is it writing a really solid executive summary? Like maybe read a sales book if you don't really feel comfortable with what the salespeople do and what sales best practices are, or watching a webinar, whatever it is, upskill yourself and wherever you feel deficient. And then I think another thing that you can do is, this kind of goes along with what Beth was saying, but set up time to train your sales team or whoever you work closely with to be better at responding to RFPs in whatever way you think is best. That, of course, upskills them, which is useful to them. It's useful to the whole company, but also selfishly sets you up as a thought leader throughout, you know, the company. Like, okay, you are the person we go to when we need to learn about proposals. And then they also see you as being a valuable resource if they don't already. So those are probably my two biggest things.
That's great. And you mentioned AI and getting used to being comfortable with it and using it for what it's good for. AI, every proposal conference or stuff that Visible Thread does, to be clear, AI can consume the conversation so quickly. And we've heard a lot of information around AI and what it's good for, and there's loads of different opinions and assets out there that people can get involved in. But from your perspective, Beth, you know, how have you used it? Where have you seen advantages? What's your perspective on it in terms of your work?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of fear around it, right? There's a lot of folks worried about AI taking our jobs, about AI completely changing our industry. And while I think that there will be changes, you know, I've heard folks be like, well, procurement is going to be all AI and the response is going to be all AI. And so it's just going to be AI talking to each other. And I get why they say that, why they have that expectation. But if there's not a human reading that work or writing that work, right, then we've sort of lost, right? It's going to end up in I think, poor matchups between, you know, vendor and customer. So, you know, I think the biggest advantage is, you can probably tell from my writing advice, I didn't talk about AI because I'm a pretty big proponent of writing, first pass writing as a person rather than AI. But I think you can certainly use AI tools for pulling out content from RFPs, getting the highlights, summarizing the RFP, summarizing your conversations with SMEs or with your sales folks about the customer's needs, or even if you're having conversations with the customer, you know, depending on your role, summarizing what they say to kind of help you write. Those things can help you write. You can take notes with it. All those things work really well, and I think that those are the things that are sort of setting folks apart, because you can do that on your own, right? You can outline something on your own, or you can use AI to sort of get you started, and then you can review it and see how well you think it matches up. But yeah, I don't necessarily agree with AI is responding to this on its own. That's never going to work, right? So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Do you agree, Christina?
Ooh, I think it's okay at writing a first draft if it's coming from really good sources, right? AI is only as good as the sources it's pulling from. And even then, you are still going to need an SME or some sort of person who knows what they're talking about to review for accuracy. And then I think something that would be really powerful that doesn't quite exist yet is something to review based on the stakeholders, right? To make sure it's going to resonate with them. And I think it's going to need a person to go through and edit it, especially at the moment. But I honestly think AI, that's kind of like a low-hanging fruit. And I think I just read something on Customer Inc. the other day about how only 38% of sales leaders feel comfortable using it for data analytics. And I think that's where we as proposal managers can really come in, like as a collective, and be kind of push for AI to do that more data analytics with AI. I'm talking about do the qualification I was talking about for us. I'm talking about reviewing any past data to really hone what you need to be, like your target customers for the future, how to improve. I think really look, I guess for that guy who asks about questions about what to do today if you're bored, is have AI really look at the data that you have to synthesize that data and how you can be better, and then make a plan on how you make improvements for 2025. Because that's the place that most of us are in right now is we'll be making that plan either at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And I think that's where data can really, really help us as proposals and sales teams.
Fabulous. And Beth, you mentioned it at the very beginning. Yeah, there was a fear at the very beginning and I think most industries, no matter what you're doing, as a marketer, I certainly, you'd look at what ChatGPT came out and you look, oh, this replaced me in a year, or vice versa. And do you think that's it's diluted a little bit? Do you think people have kind of gotten over it a little bit and they're kind of, okay, the hype is not that hyped? So.
Yeah, for sure. I think people are really understanding sort of how it can be used as a tool without it being something that's going to take us over, right? And I think the pitfall that we run into when we use AI for writing is that if we don't have it has to be reviewed, right? This is what Christina's saying. It has to be reviewed for accuracy, for meeting the needs of what we need the writing to do, right? So I think we think, okay, we're going to use AI for writing now, but we still have to have somebody to review that. We still have to have the expert be able to review that. It's, maybe it's taking less time because they're not starting from scratch, but yeah, we're not going to run into where AI is just doing it all for us, because that's their pitfall, right? If we expect AI to do it all for us, there's going to be mistakes.
Yeah, sure. And Christina, you mentioned like one particular example where you're using it for data analysis. I personally find it, and you very eloquently said, it's as good as the information as it has to build on. I find it fantastic for if you have data in front of you, giving you a narrative and help you communicate that narrative, like just even taking this webinar and being able to summarize it and put it into something coherent and in different formats. It's very good at that kind of thing. Is there any other like use cases that you find, okay, that AI has really helped me here?
Yeah, mostly for data synthesization, information synthesization. But the reason why I think that's such a big deal, and I know people are tired of hearing about AI, but the reason why that's such a big deal is because it takes me as somebody who kind of does capture it takes me about 3 to 5 days to really fully understand every single conversation we've had with the customer, to the CRM, through any notes that have been taking place, to then go on their website, understand all of their investor letters. I mean, there's so much information out there that we should be understanding as proposal writers and proposal managers and capture managers. And that's a really good way to get that information. So if you're not using it, you're kind of wasting your own time, and it's your own fault. And that's kind of mean to say, but it's true.
I'd agree with that. I know it is mean to say, but I always I actually have a funny scenario where I'm a lecturer of a university, and you get the kind of the sentiment of students. If they need to write an essay, it's a lot easier now, they can do it. And there's a bit of a kind of don't do that, they shouldn't be doing that, or they shouldn't be using AI to produce projects or stuff. And it's like, well, they're going to have to be able to do it when they go into a career. They're going to be using this stuff, and isn't this the opportunity really to kind of show them what it's good for and what it's not good for? And I think that's happening in every industry. I think people are like, you going, okay, it is good for certain things, and we have to embrace it for what it is and let people play with it and let people find out what it works for, but with like a cautious eye, and with a review process that is a human at some point. So it's all about building it as part of your process and having that kind of that check. It's the same as anything. And proposals, I think in terms of actually having a clear process, there's no better industry really in terms of actually outlining what needs to happen when. So that's really exciting. But we won't express too much, but in terms of a tech or AI piece, do you see anything in the next, year or 2 years where you see it going? Do you see anything from vendors or wants from customers? I think you said at the very beginning something it's not quite good at yet. Is there anything that you see where it's going, maybe, Beth? Is there any thoughts about where AI trends are going?
I mean, I think we're definitely going to see more tools get introduced. And
see more tools. There's yeah, more.
So many.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
I also think one of the main things we're going to see is tools that haven't adopted AI yet are going to be adopting AI more. So that's sort of what I'm more interested in seeing, is how those existing tools that we use are utilizing AI within the tool to kind of better streamline what they've already got going on. But I think we'll see more tools. Am I going to look into all of them? Probably not. But yeah, I'm kind of sticking with what we use, or if we can identify something very specific that we need and it exists, then maybe we'll look into it. But yeah, that's kind of what I see. Is I see more of those existing tools sort of getting a little bit better with their AI use. Yeah.
Christina, from your side, anything that you think is incoming?
Yeah, I am, and I think what we're already seeing a little bit of, and is going to be more useful, or we're going to see a lot more of in 2025, is procurement teams are probably going to receive about 2 to 3 times more RFP responses, like proposals, than they did previously, because the barrier to entry is so low with AI. Anybody can generate a response now. The problem is kind of what we already know. These proposals aren't very good that are coming out. And so I think best practices that were important now are going to be essential in the future. So building that trust with customers, really personalizing that content, whether you use AI or not, to the customer and their needs, talking about cost of inaction, being really specific on the solution that you're providing your customer. All those really good best practices is going to put you up at the very top from all the crap that is going to be submitted. So that to me is going to be what we're really going to have to focus on, whether you're using AI or not, because everybody else is going to be using AI, and most people are going to be using it poorly.
Interesting. I like it. There's lots of debate, and I think AI it's one of these. It's unusual. It's unusual in terms of it's such a bang of technology that's so fast moving and fast paced and changing every 6 months. It seems to be it's slightly different or slightly getting better in certain capacities. And I feel no matter what industry, it's one to be embraced, but it's one to always question how you're using it, or using it for the right tasks. Is the output it's giving me, the fear is gives me an output, and we get so comfortable with it, we don't check it, but we can never really get to that point. Great conversation, and I'm sure if there's any specific questions in the audience about tech or AI, we're happy to take those. But is there, and there's definitely a debate going on in the chat, which is interesting, about hallucinations and all sorts of things. But when it comes to even in your history, but mainly this year, is there any challenges that you've faced in the industry that were unique to this year, or that kind of have grown into this year? Beth, from your side, is there any kind of challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I think we've covered them. I mean, just like we talked about shorter timelines and you know, Christina mentioned smaller teams, so fewer resources and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, I think that we're seeing that across most industries, and I think it spans across from, you know, B2B to B2G as well. Yeah.
Anything from your side, Christina?
Yeah, I'm trying to be specific, but in general, I think the way people are buying now is very different than it was before for a multitude of reasons. And so that means our proposals, the way we're writing them, needs to also be different. We can't just be doing what we were doing 3 years ago. If you are, then you're not going to be doing things. And I'm not even talking about AI. I'm talking about the messaging we use in our proposals. So if you're not familiar with what those are, please go watch some webinars, read some books, and read some research like Gardner, Forrester, or whatever B2G industry tools there are or information there is, because you got to get caught up on that, because what you did before is not going to work now.
I love it. And it's interesting when we've done these webinars in the past and we talk about challenges, we often go down the route of burnout, and Beth, you're kind of alluding to it a little bit in terms of smaller teams and faster deadlines. With that, burnout's going to happen. Is that accurate? Is it still as prevalent in your roles today as ever?
Oh yeah, I definitely think so. And I am just a huge advocate of being able to say no. You have to manage your burnout for yourself, and kind of be your own advocate for your own burnout, and being able to say, even, you know, I work for an employer, right? So I have expectations, but even with my employer, I have to be able to set up those boundaries and say, like, hey, this is when I'm done for the day. You know, here's when I'm willing to work a weekend or whatever. You know, like, I have to be able to say I'm willing to do this, or I'm not, and it has to be on my terms, right? So I think that being able to set up those boundaries is really what's going to keep you from burnout. And I think we also have to have a little sympathy for people who have other things going on in their lives, right? Because burnout doesn't just come from work, and we talk about it within that context a lot, but burnout can also come from parenting, right? Burnout can come from dealing with a loss, like in your family, right? Dealing with a death or something like that. So I think that we have to pay attention to those things as well, and advocate for empathy in the workplace, and also self-advocate for our own boundaries. I just think that's so important, because yeah, burnout is on, we're close to burnout almost all year round, right, in this industry. So yeah.
I think a lot of people, especially earlier in their career, will benefit from that advice, Pet. From your perspective, learning that as you've gone on and adding that in, but coming into the industry, I think that's good advice to get. And Christina, you talked about data, and you talked about becoming bigger, being bigger than the proposal management space a little bit earlier on, and being part of the sales environment. I think that's part of this conversation too, because if you can show your boss or your leader that this is why, with data, this is why we shouldn't bid for everything, or this is why this thing isn't really gonna this date is not going to last, or whatever. This is data that kind of proves out more of a reasoning, that can help with this kind of burnout factor, making us more empowered to actually collaborate a little bit better. Any thoughts on that, Christina, or anything else around burnout?
Just what you said around qualification, I can promise you your sales leaders have been tasked with more efficiencies. Smart qualification is going to help with efficiencies. You can show data to prove that. I think another thing that you could possibly do, well, I mean, I know this is a problem because there are so many more freelancers now on LinkedIn posting that they're now freelancers, and it's because of that burnout. They just could not do it anymore. And I think the reason behind that is something that we don't have a lot of control over, and that is, especially with acquisitions now, with private equity, especially in the B2B space, sales leaders are being charged with having a lot of pipeline. and now RFPs are having to do with pipeline. And so that is a conversation you need to have with your sales leaders of how you're going to navigate pipeline, what's smart pipeline, and RFP is a part of that smart pipeline. And in B2G, that might be a struggle and it might be a little bit different, but for my B2B folks, that one's gonna be a little bit tougher, but it's a conversation you need to have.
Oh, fabulous.
I'll reiterate a point that Christina made earlier too about speaking up for yourself with your sales leaders. They also don't understand all the time what your workload looks like, especially, you know, if it crosses over teams, right? So if you're regional, say, like one sales leader might understand that what their team has given you, but they might not understand that you might have stuff being tasked from another group as well. So being able to not just advocate for yourself as far as your accomplishments go, but also being able to say like, hey, here's what my workload looks like right now. Here's what I can do. Here's what I need help with, you know, knowing who can help you when you get busy, right, is really important. And just being able to say like, here's what it looks like for me. Here's what I can accomplish, right, with what I've been given, or just put it on them and say, here's what I've been asked to do. What do you want me to prioritize? I think can be really important as well. And if they say everything, I would push back, right? I would push back onto that and kind of reconsider your position there.
Super advice. I know you're tongue in cheek, but like it's true. I think the advice you're giving people is very fair from your experience, and yeah, and it's a factor that pops up in the minute we get into the weeds with proposals. This burnout topic pops up, and all the AI tools and all the automation tools and text doesn't solve that directly. Coming from a vendor, even that's not the answer to this. It is about, you know, being able to collaborate better and communicate better, and to be able to fight for your position a little bit better as well. So we are coming up to time, and I want to give the audience the last chance to submit questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in. But even as a kind of a rounding out kind of topic, let's look at like it's coming into the end of the year. Looking forward to 2025. Is there any changes, any innovations that you see coming in the industry? Anything that we haven't spoke about, or you want to kind of develop on a little bit more? Maybe Christina, maybe from your side. Give Brett a break from going first.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that there so much data has come out about sales changes in the past year. And I think we need to be kind of focusing on what those look like, because I don't know what's happening in 2025. I know AI is going to get smarter, it's going to get stronger. Like we know that Claude can actually take over, like, you know, a certain LLM can take over your computer and do a lot of those tasks for you. And it might even be worth looking at what are those really boring project management tasks. I mean, if you think those are boring, and what can those take from you and do? Because that is a very real possibility that by the middle of 2025, that can be done for you. I'm talking about scheduling your meetings, setting up a Slack channel, a Teams channel, whatever it is that you use for communication. You know, setting up an actual proposal in your proposal management tool, if you have one, or setting up a Google Doc, whatever it is that you use, it's going to be able to do all those things for you. So I would suggest sitting down, looking at your process and decide, what do I hate doing? What do I not want to do? What is taking up too much time? What is too manual? And can I give this over to AI to do for me so I can do more strategic things? That would be probably my suggestion or thought of 2025. Yeah.
And you mentioned it earlier, Christina, you might enjoy doing those tasks or be an expert in those tasks, but if AI can do it for you, someone else out there is using AI to do it. So I think it is getting with it a little bit in terms of, you know, why should you do this manually when you can benefit from the technology or what's out there? Yeah, but it's just about moving yourself to a different part of the process, and it's that review phase potentially.
Exactly.
Beth, on your side, any major themes or trends for next year? Crystal ball stuff.
Right. I mean, I think, and from a more general standpoint, I think that it's going to be a year of learning and a year of adapting. And I think that we don't necessarily know exactly where it's going, but I think it's going to look a little different for every team. So being able to learn, right, is going to be important. So seeking out those opportunities for self-educating, as well as being able to adapt to what's being put in front of you. I think that's going to be really important in the next year.
I love that, and it's all you've mentioned a lot of resources in the last, over the last kind of 50 minutes. You've talked about Gartner, you've talked about like Forrester results, you've talked about even looking into past performance and gaining trends and webinars and different pieces. Is there anywhere where you would recommend to look to upskill? If you had that minute in the day to upskill, where would you go? What communities would you join?
Yeah. Well, obviously, we're going to recommend Pi. So if you're unfamiliar, proposal industry experts, look it up on LinkedIn. We're both a part of, Christine and I both a part of Pi. So yeah, it's a community not only of people from both procurement and proposal management side. There's also a library of resources. We put on a conference, all those sorts of things. So huge learning opportunity there, because I think, we can post something on LinkedIn about a question that we have. It's like, oh, I'm connected with a lot of proposal managers. Maybe I'll just ask on LinkedIn. Not the place for it, right? Come over to Pi, ask us in there, talk about what's going on within your industry. So yeah, I think that's kind of always my go-to when people say, like, I'm looking for a job in proposals. Hey, I'm looking for information. Come join the Pi community. Yeah.
Great. Christine, I know you definitely would express that as well, I'm sure, but anything else or double on?
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, Pi, there's no such thing as a stupid question in Pi, like 0. And then also I would suggest a bunch of books, anything by Customer Inc. I feel like I'm sponsored by them. I am not. I'm just obsessed. They really will teach you how to sell, not from like a proposal point of view, but if you use it as a proposal manager, it's going to be really useful. I would also suggest, there are so many like really good proposal management books, but they're very UK centric. So there's one by Scott Keyser, which is the 6 ways of winning proposals. It's so good. But yeah, I would just say Pi, because you're gonna be able to get all the book recommendations. You're gonna be able to get all the webinar recommendations there. And it's a lot of it is free. And if it is paid, if you do try to go the paid course, it's $65 a year. Like it's pretty cheap, honestly. So yeah.
Very good. Well, Beth, Christina, thank you both for your time. This has been super. We've shared Pi links, we've shared lots of things throughout the chat. There was a question at one point, will this be recorded? Yeah, everything today is recorded and shared, so it's always free and open for everyone to enjoy and share with their peers and colleagues. Just before we leave the next session, so you'll be automatically kind of redirected to the next session. The next session is with Fergal McGovern, our CEO. It's not a product demo or anything like that. It's more so about the vision of Visible Tread and how AI fits in with our kind of traditional software and how kind of the landscape of technology of GovCon. So we're going to talk a little bit about the hype of AI and where we are right now and where we see it going as an organization, what we're trying to do for our customers. A lot of that session has been built on working on beta projects and doing customer sessions and roundtables, trying to understand what has worked, what hasn't worked, what do they want to benefit from technology and AI, what's the right way of doing different things. So feel free to tune in for that. And we have lots more sessions throughout the rest of the day, but I hope you've enjoyed this session. And Beth and Christina, final words or anything, but thank you so much for your time. You've been fabulous.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Go ahead, yeah.
I would say it's good to be here, but thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for having us here. Everyone, connect with us on LinkedIn. I'm sure that both Christina and I would love to continue the conversation there, or in Pi, if you want.
Absolutely. Please do. I do recommend connecting with both Christina and Beth. They post regularly. That's how we found them in the first place. They're always coming up with clever ways of kind of making things interesting, and they have lots of good information to share from their members. And yeah, please do. So enjoy the next session. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us all.